The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
We got a big recap and a short preview coming up on today's edition of Fantasy NBA Today. What's happening, everybody? A happy Tuesday morning to you all. I am your host, Dan Bespers, and this is a Hoop Ball presentation. That's hoop-ball.com, or follow at hoopballfantasy on Twitter. You guys have been taking my advice on that. I've seen the follows chunking over like an hour after I release the podcast. I know that's you guys. And if any of you still haven't gone over and followed Hoop Ball Fantasy on Twitter, please do so now. And if you're playing fantasy basketball, and I haven't done this a lot in this podcast because I've been generally, I do my promos, I tell you guys what I think you ought to do. If you're playing fantasy basketball and you are not on Twitter, you are behind. And this is not, we're not sponsored by Twitter or anything like that. Here's the thing. There are so many disturbing corners of Twitter and the internet. Just like violently disturbing corners of them. But if you cultivate the right things to follow, you can use Twitter for, I don't know if it's the intended purpose, but it's certainly the one that's useful for us, which is following beat writers, team accounts, team public relations accounts, team blogs, places where you can get information that allows you to make fantasy decisions quicker than the other people in your league. So I would say now go to twitter.com, make your account. You don't even need to put a picture up there. Just be an egg. Be a silhouette, whatever they use. I think it's still an egg, right? Used to be an egg. Be an egg profile picture. And follow me, follow Hoop Ball Fantasy, and start following different accounts. And honestly, if you need help with this, I'm happy to assist, but the easiest way is just go look at the people that I'm following on Twitter. Now, you'll browse past some folks that are friends I had in high school or, other people that I know from my personal side of things and then when I worked in minor league baseball. But I would say I follow like 800, 900 people on Twitter, and the vast majority, 80% at least, are NBA-related accounts. Beat writers, team accounts, things that bring me my information so fast that I can make fantasy decisions better. So get on Twitter, follow most of the people I'm following. Your life will improve. Follow me at Dan Bespers, DanBesbris, and follow at Hoopball Fantasy for your fantasy blurb feed. So there you go. That's my PSA. You guys got to get on social media because fantasy is just zipping past you at this point. Like if you're waiting for an article to come out, or frankly, even my podcast, which I love the fact that all of you guys listen to it every day. It means the world to me. It's the thing I work the hardest on at Hoop Ball among the 9,000 things I'm working on. So this, your continued listenership is truly tremendous and remarkable, and I love it. But Twitter is actually more important. You can make decisions quicker. I don't do a podcast in the middle of games at the end of the night. So get on there. Get on there. Stop goofing around. Follow the people I'm following. You'll be happy you did. We have a big recap. A lot of games to go over on Monday, although, I had the same story as usual. Some of them were postponed, and we ended up with 9. I think there was supposed to be 11. We ended up with 9. Meh. Annoying, but that's the way things are going right now. I'll tell you what, the Spurs-Pelicans postponement has me equal parts worried and hopeful, and I don't know which direction to go with that yet. Let me explain myself before we dive into the actual individual box scores and fantasy accomplishments from Monday night. We have no idea what the two different... these are two teams that came from different places. If this was a revenge or a rematch set, we've talked about in the show a lot when teams play each other 2 times in a row, it would make a whole hell of a lot more sense. But the Spurs had just come from playing the Wizards on Sunday, They played the Mavericks way back on Friday, and they were supposed to have a back-to-back. Supposed to go Sunday, Monday. They hosted the Wizards at home, and then they were going to play the Pelicans in New Orleans, and they didn't go. And on the New Orleans side, they had just finished up an horrific 6-game road trip where they went 1-5, and they had just played the Timberwolves on Saturday, so they did have a game off in between things. And the news that came out said that neither team had enough players to play due to contact tracing. So what in the hell happened? What in the hell happened? And another reason for me to say what in the hell happened is that the Wolves, the last team the Pelicans played on Saturday, they did play last night. And the Spurs, well, I don't believe that their opponent did not play last night. The Wizards played tonight in Houston, but we haven't heard anything about that game being canceled. So presumably, this had nothing to do with the recent opponents for the two teams. So I ask you all, and I think I'm actually getting decent at reading the tea leaves with stuff like this. Like, when there's one player who gets listed in health and safety protocols, we can usually assume it's something on the personal side. When there's a few players on the same team, you can usually assume it's team-related, and they're going to miss multiple games. I have no idea what's going on with this one. How in the world are two separate teams that hadn't seen each other, they said neither one had enough players to actually run the basketball game? I have to believe that we were given slightly faulty information in that perhaps, this is me, and this is not like conspiracy theorism, this is the NBA trying to figure out how to give information without giving away too much to the general public, us. My theory here is that one of these two teams had a positive test or inconclusive test or something to that effect, and so they just wiped the game out. My guess then would be it's the Pelicans, if the Wizards actually play tonight, that the Pels had a positive test that came back positive perhaps from the morning of testing or the off-day testing, but that no one came back positive from the day they played the Timberwolves, or that game would have gotten pulled off the board as well. So presumably, the Pels got tested on Sunday or first thing Monday morning. One of those tests probably came back positive, and they just said, you know what? We don't know what the hell this team's been up to. We don't know if there's been an exposure with the rest of this team, so we're just going to cancel the game, and we're going to say no one had the right number of players. I could be totally wrong. In fact, there's probably like a 90% chance I'm wrong. But the fact, that they said both teams, neither team, had enough players due to contact tracing, and the Wolves still got to play, and we haven't heard anything about the Wizards game tonight, and I flipped that in my head because the Spurs played the Wizards, so the Pels played the Timberwolves. The fact that the Timberwolves got to play makes me think that nothing from over the weekend was actually at fault. So something came back yesterday morning that canceled the game. But how could it possibly be both sides independent of one another? That doesn't make any sense at all. Especially with the Wolves being allowed to play. And especially with the fact that Washington-Houston is still on the board for tonight. I don't get it. I don't get it. So let's dive into a recap, because that one's got my brain all twisted up. Orlando beat Charlotte in a revenge game, and this one was a perfect one because it had all the right setup for each team to get one ball game. First one, Orlando was in their first game back home. They fell apart in the second half. They just sort of ran out of gas. Charlotte came back and beat them. Their key guys didn't play all that well. Charlotte got a 40-burger out of Hayward the night before, and so we went Orlando on our wager, and it ended up being a relatively easy winner. Magic led by double digits pretty much the entire second half. Hayward played well again, and he's a top 20. He's a second-rounder this year. That's just who he is. Terry Rozier, hoopball sixer, having a brilliant, very late draft campaign. Rozier was drafted in like the 115 range, and where the heck is that dude right now? 43 in 9-cat. That might taper off a little bit with the 47% shooting, but 74% free throws, that probably comes up. And overall, he's just having a really good season. That's a great hoop ball sixer. One of the things I was watching in this game, and maybe the only thing I was watching, was what impact does Cody Zeller have on the rest of the big men? Because we knew Bismack Biyombo is eventually going to get phased mostly out, but now that there are two traditional centers on the roster, what does that do largely to P.J. Washington? Because Bismack wasn't worth using anyway, but Washington was. When Zeller went down, and then they had to start playing PJ at center a little bit more, he launched himself into great fantasy value. Well, he had a terrible ball game yesterday. I mean, I think you can chalk one bad game up to just sort of whatever. PJ number 112 on the season right now, largely due... PJ Washington and Darius Baisley remind me of each other quite a bit in terms of their fantasy stat set. PJ a little bit more on the defensive side, Baisley a little bit more rebounding, but otherwise... pretty similar, just two guys that have all this fantasy upside, but the percentages are like a boulder in the ocean for these dudes. So if Zeller now, who ramped up to 18 minutes yesterday, and at some point he'll probably take the starting job, and he and Bismack, but together, those two guys chewed up 45 of the 48 center minutes, which left only 3, if they wanted to use it on him, for PJ. And that's not enough. We need him getting 7-8 minutes at center, which also would allow Washington to get, closer to the 28-29 minutes a ball game that he had been at recently. And so this is concerning. Now, playing against Vooch, you're sort of forced to go to a more traditional big man because PJ would have gotten obliterated in that matchup. Vooch ended up wearing him out anyway, so it kind of didn't work. Orlando, relatively big in the front court. They run Kem Birch as their backup center, and he's a big guy. Not giant, but pretty powerful. I do think PJ bounces back for Charlotte in their next ball game, or certainly a soon ball game, but this is something to monitor. A healthy Cody Zeller has historically made Charlotte a much better team. So it's a big man that can actually kind of get out and run a little bit, but he also never stays healthy for more than a month at a time. So, whatever we find out probably vanishes soon. I remain generally out on the Miles Bridges thing. He's number 120, and that seems like that's probably about where he's going to cruise for most of the year. That, by the way, is startable in an unlimited games 9-cat, 12-team league where you're starting 3 or 4 bench guys. But in a games cap, you want more. You want more than top 120. And that eliminates, frankly, a lot of guys who, in my estimation, there's no real upward trajectory for him here. So Charlotte was an interesting one. There was a lot to watch there. LaMelo Ball remains, in my estimation, kind of a buy low. He's in a lull right now, a rookie lull, and he will snap out of it because his game is pretty sweet. So stick with PJ. I think it'll be okay, but definitely monitor it. On the Orlando side, Cole Anthony had 21 in this game, which was very surprising, if only because Aaron Gordon was back, so they were running more of their offense through Gordon, who went atrocious 4 for 10 at the free throw line. But otherwise, he looks great in that point forward job. 12 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 threes, and a block for AG. But his percentage is also quite bad, but you can't be going 4 for 10 at the foul line. The surprising note here is that Anthony got 12 shots and made 4 3-pointers. He remains a guy that needs to be on rosters. There's no change. You guys have heard me say it now probably 9 times on this podcast. Must own, but not must start. Kind of the same story for Terrence Ross right now, who remains in a brutal shooting slump, but at least had 4 defensive stats to make up for it a little bit. Yeesh. Man, that dude is cold. Woof. Evan Fournier, who we never really logged as a very good basketball player, has made Orlando so much better by coming back from his back spasms. He's averaging 18, 2, and 4 this year. His assists are up with no point guard on that team. Fournier actually has top 70 upside now, and he could end up being a really nice draft day, kind of late old man style grab. Like usual, the same old story. Anyway, we spent a lot of time on this first ball game because the next one, we don't need quite as much time. Philadelphia was without Joel Embiid, so pretty much throw out the Philly side. For Detroit, Delon Wright has come alive. We had already talked about him last week as a re-add kind of guy because he'd been sort of revving things up. He's up to number 91, by the way, in 9-category leagues right now, and he's still only averaging 9 points a game on 43% shooting. So there's actually significant upside beyond that. I would be floored if DeLon Wright was not universally rostered in your fantasy leagues at this point. Like, if he's not on a team, y'all got to get into a better league because he's been so good lately, and this was sort of the, all right, now you've run out of time. He will take a step back when Derrick Rose comes back. He'll take another step back probably when Killian Hayes comes back, but that could be months. And he just looks confident now, which is a really big deal. Meanwhile, Jeremy Grant still trucking, and our recent hot pickup from Friday's show, Wayne Ellington, had 6 more three-pointers in this game. He is blindingly hot right now. Wayne Ellington on a run of 7-4-6-4-6 three-pointers his last 5 ball games. That is 27 threes in 5 games. What a huge deal that makes for a roto league in particular. To be able to get that many three-pointers out of that few games and on hot field goal percent, massive, massive difference maker. I have a team where I was very nearly punting threes, and Wayne Ellington has brought them back almost single-handedly. So that was a good one we found last week. Toronto at Indiana. Kyle Lowry was back, but was he back really? Picked up a foul late and got ejected, I think. I thought he had fouled out, but then some of the box scores say he only had 5 fouls. I thought he had 6, so inconclusive. Norman Powell, still the streamer option here with Pascal Siakam out. Just keep running Powell into your lineup as long as one guy is out for Toronto. And as soon as everybody's back, then you probably stop. So you got that. Indiana side, Domantas Sabonis hurt his knee and did not return. I think he left midway through the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken, and Indiana somehow managed to still hang on and win this ball game, largely due to Jeremy Lamb, and we'll get to him in a second. If Sabonis misses any time, I would say Miles Turner gets to do more, but dude's been so damn good anyway, so who cares there? Doug McDermott cooled off after a heater because TJ McConnell actually ended up soaking up extra minutes in this one. They kind of matched the Raptors' small backcourt. And if TJ McConnell plays 28 minutes, he's a must-roster guy, but I don't think this is happening again anytime soon. The bigger story here is that Jeremy Lamb, who only played 19 minutes the previous night, soaked up everything his body could handle in this one, played 33 minutes and had 22 points, 7 boards, a steal, 5 for 5 on free throws, which has always been one of his really, really key upward markers on his fantasy numbers. 3 3-pointers. Maybe Jeremy Lamb is expanding his range a little bit. This is far faster than we expected him to get rolling. I mean, we're talking about 4 games in off a giant injury last year, and he's crushing it. And I have him in a couple of places, able to stash him in, I think, like 2 of my 5 money leagues, so I'll certainly take it. So he's number 44, limited sample size, of course, but 25 minutes a game. There's no reason that number can't go higher, even if the other stuff does come down. Jeremy Lamb looks great. He looks great. Justin Holiday cooled off, but he still played 30 minutes here, so no change to that valuation as long as both Karis LeVert and TJ Warren remain out. Brooklyn and Miami had no energy. I mean, we can say the teams played good defense, but it was just a clang fest on almost all accounts. I am not making many adjustments to Miami stuff, but I am hereby noting that it looks like Kelly Olynyk has kind of run out of steam. The whole team generally has, particularly the guys that didn't miss time due to the COVID outbreak on the Miami roster. Like Duncan Robinson, he's running out of gas. Kelly Olynyk's running out of gas. And the guys that were okay, Bam, Goran Dragic, were guys that missed a few games in there, so they're not quite as run down as their teammates. When Miami finally has an opportunity to rest a little bit, get some of their guys back, I think maybe you do see an adjustment back up for these dudes, but I'm actually okay with moving on from Olynyk, at least in the short term, but keep a very close watch on that, because he's still starting. He just has nothing in his legs right now. He looks cooked. Brooklyn looked really tired, too, aside from James Harden, who had, well, a very important game. This game was a one-point game. Brooklyn led Miami 81-80 halfway through the fourth quarter, and then they outscored Miami 17-5 over the final 6 minutes, and it just, this game was a lot closer than that final score would indicate. Jeff Green played 34 minutes again. He looks like the center to own right now, even though DeAndre Jordan, as the more traditional big man, has the easier path to fantasy value. But between those two guys, I think Jeff Green's your dude to look at. 10-5 with a steal, missed his three-pointers in a rare twist, but did go 6 for 6 at the foul line. He's a he's a plodding late-round big man, but oftentimes that's useful, especially in an unlimited games format. So Jeff Green is your guy. Am I dropping DeAndre Jordan? No, not yet, but his minutes do appear to be trending down as Green's have trended up, and it looks like it's tipping in that direction. Lakers and Cavs ended up having a bit of a tight one, certainly tighter than they expected, so LeBron took over against his old team, hometown cooking 46-8-6 for the King. 2 steals, 2 blocks, 7 3-pointers. Anthony Davis was cold, 17-10, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks, so obviously still able to float his numbers all right. And then Montrezl Harrell, who's sort of your other guy on LA that tends to be inside the cut line, and that's it. Lakers, nothing changed there. Cavs side was a team we were watching to mostly get a feel for who was going to get the playing time and what they were going to do with it, and they spread the wealth around, which is exactly what we don't want from a fantasy team. Colin Sexton had some foul issues, or he most likely would have played additional minutes. Darius Garland, as he's ramping back into game shape, got up to 26 minutes here and had 11-5. If you can buy low on Garland right now, I would. I think perhaps his owners are thinking maybe this is what's going to happen going forward, but more than likely, Isaac Okoro or Cedi Osman will move back to the bench. That'll allow Garland to slot in as the point guard and slide Colin Sexton up to the starting shooting guard role. Osman's actually been surprisingly good so far this year, but we all know that the other shoe's about to drop. He's still number 154 overall because his percentages are terrible, and he doesn't do enough stuff to cancel that out. So no, I don't care about Cedi having another big ball game offensively. I'm more interested in how the minutes get spread around. And for Osman, who doesn't have a good fantasy stat set anyway, he played the second most minutes on the team to Isaac Okoro. Andre Drummond played 28 minutes and was pretty damn effective in them. Jarrett Allen played 29 minutes, but wasn't all that effective. JaVale McGee played 13. Larry Nance was out with a sprained wrist. Kevin Love remains out, and we don't really have a timeline on that as well. So it gave Jarrett Allen and Andre Drummond an opportunity to play a little bit more minutes to increase their number with no Nance on the floor. Taurean Prince started and played 25 minutes, but I do think some of that was also Larry Nance related. So I'm not adding or dropping anybody from this team from this ball game, but I want us to keep a very close watch on the Cavaliers once they start to get back to full strength, because things could get very jammed up. I don't know if anybody sort of, at least on the wing side, elevates themselves, and then even towards the front court, how does that get split up? Denver and Dallas, a couple of teams that were also a little bit tired, but instead of the Brooklyn-Miami result, these two tired teams ended up scoring a bunch because nobody really felt like playing any defense. And that's great for fantasy purposes because Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Jokic went big. Jamal Murray got ejected in this ball game, so his slightly diminished line, you can blame on that. The others on Denver are beginning to all wipe each other out. Now that the Nuggets are generally healthy, the others I would classify as Will Barton, Paul Millsap, Monty Morris, Gary Harris, and JaMychal Green. There are 5 non-obvious starters for fantasy purposes on this team. And lately, JaMychal Green, and to a slightly lesser extent, Gary Harris, have actually been the most trustworthy among those guys. But unfortunately, it still hasn't been enough. You know, JaMychal Green kind of needs someone to be out for him to reach fantasy potential. I like what he's done so far. He's, 11 points, 6.5 rebounds, but 2 3-pointers a game is also nice, but he's not getting any steals or blocks. And 21 minutes is where he's sitting right now. That's just, unfortunately, not really enough for him to do fantasy damage. He needs a few more. 21 is close. He's 150 range in 21 minutes. If he could get up to 25, he'd probably be a top 100 guy. But he's most likely not getting to that level. And then Gary Harris, who seems like the only guy among that group whose minutes are safe in the 30s, he doesn't do anything with them. He's an on the floor for extended minutes, just guarding people. That's his role at this point. So Will Barton, who probably could do something if he was playing 30 minutes a game, not getting 30 minutes, and also potentially not 100% healthy, and Paul Millsap, getting old real fast, has been mostly phased out. I think you can probably drop all of those guys, though I'll admit Barton is the last one to drop just because he actually has a little bit of upside, and we've seen him play enough minutes to get there for stretches, just not consistently. He's now outside the top 150 with terrible percentages and just sort of not enough role to make up for it. Is it possible that Barton gets his field goal percent back up into the mid-40s? Historically, maybe the steals come back up over 1. Because there is a world there where, if he adds another eighth to his scoring stats and get him up into that, 13 points, 1.7, 1.6, 1.7 three-pointers type of thing, I mean, he could elevate pretty quickly. But as he is right now, he does not belong in starting lineups. So I'll give you the option here. I don't know that it's a clear drop, but it's certainly getting close. Dallas just needs people back at this point. Luka Doncic trying to do it all himself, and he simply cannot. Tim Hardaway Jr. is still mostly worth starting, at least while most of this team is out injured. Hardaway at number 130 on the year because his percentages have been falling kind of precipitously, but not a drop. Because, he could get hot for a week, and that 130 becomes top 80 in a couple of ball games. And then nobody else is trustworthy on this team right now. Jalen Brunson has been your streaming option lately. Trey Burke is sort of in and out of being mildly useful. They just need guys back. Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Richardson, Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleba. I mean, we're talking about 4 rotation guys on that Dallas team that they've they've basically been without him for 2 weeks. Boston blew out Chicago. Daniel Tice had a big ball game. I think you can go ahead and add him at this point. I think he moved from watch list to add with 28 minutes in this ball game. I will say, though, and it's a weird thing to compare these two, I think Daniel Tice saw additional minutes partly because Kemba Walker was out, so they were able to slide everybody down a ticket. Marcus Smart went from shooting guard to point guard, Jaylen Brown down to shooting guard, Jason Tatum down to small forward, where with Kemba around, those 4 guys are starting, which means, unless you bring Marcus Smart off the bench, but I think they'll probably start their key guys, which means Tice and Thompson are pretty much going to be fighting, and Robert Williams, over the center minutes, and it might wipe them all out. But you can't miss the boat here. So add Tice, and if in Boston's next game, when they're finally back at full strength for the first time in forever, if Tice still plays big minutes, great. You had him on your roster. If he doesn't, you can probably part ways pretty quickly. We're going to get enough data by the next ball game on this one. Chicago side, they just didn't have a very good ball game. They didn't defend well. They didn't get to the free throw line, and when they did, they missed them. They turned the ball over a bunch. Nice to see Thaddeus Young have a big ball game. I wish he'd get moved to a place where he could play this type of minutes every night, but it's not going to happen in Chicago. Otto Porter, 23 minutes off the bench. I don't like that number for him, but he did a lot with them, so I'm keeping him on my roster for now. Garrett Temple's actually been pretty good off the bench as well. I have to wonder if there's a change coming at some point, because Patrick Williams started but played only 10 minutes. Do they put Otto Porter back in the starting lineup? Does Garrett Temple maybe jump in there? Kobe White's been kind of bad. He has these big games where he pops every once in a while, but no defensive stats at all. And, for as well as Chicago's playing, it seems like a lot of what they're doing well is depth related. I like the Bulls. They're kind of fun this year. Zach LaVine seems to have taken a step forward. Lauri Markkanen is back to being Lauri Markkanen. They're trying to keep Otto Porter healthy all year, pretty clearly, because he's better than the guys that are trotting out there, but it seems like they don't want to play him a ton of minutes because the last time they did, he hurt his back. So we'll see. Keep a close watch on the Bulls. There could be a little bit of a changing of the guard here at some point. And the late games last night, the Thunder, that was one of our wagers also, beat the Blazers. Mike Muscala had 6 3-pointers in this game. This is the only place he can play, I guess, is Oklahoma City. Shea looked really good, aside from missing a bunch of free throws late. I think he went 1 for 4 in crunch time free throws, or this would have been a really nice line for Shea. No George Hill, no Al Horford. George was resting the back-to-back. Horford's been out for personal stuff for a while now. Darius Bazley finally had a slightly better shooting ball game with 19 and 7, but still missed a couple of free throws. No defensive stats was a little weird for him. And, the thing about Bazley, and I think we spent a bunch of time on him on yesterday's podcast, I do still think he's a stash, but it's very possible that he doesn't become fantasy truly relevant until next year, because he's outside the top 200 right now in 29 minutes a game. So it's not like playing time is going to be the difference maker here. It's percentages. He's a medium volume 40% shooter from the field and a low volume 74% at the free throw line. There are two big issues with his fantasy game. If you're going to score and rebound, get some threes and a couple of blocks here and there, that's great, but you can't be a net negative in so many other spots. But if those percentages come around at all, he leaps up the board fast, lightning fast. So I don't know that you can drop him. I kind of feel the same way about Lou Dort, who kind of goes in and out of actually having usage or not on any given night. I don't know that you can just dump these guys because there's so much potential. But, I mean, they really spread the wealth around yesterday. 12 shots for Muscala, 12 for Shea, 11 for Roby and Bazley, 7 for Kenny Hustle, Dort, Maladon. Excuse me, I'll get that right. Theo Maladon. And 8 for Hamidou Diallo, who was kind of running the point in the second unit and then missed 5 free throws. They had a free throw shooting situation in Oklahoma City yesterday. They would have run away with this ball game. So I think you have to hold on to Dort and Bazley, but I don't know that you can start them. At least not unless they have a big games advantage over somebody else. On the Portland side, I mean, Enes Kanter, just keep trotting him out there. He just keeps putting up good lines. I think he'll run out of gas a little bit at some point here, but he's going to be an easy top 80 center for as long as Nurk is out, and he's running above that right now. If you can sell him for a top 50 type of guy, I would do it. I don't think you can, though. Meanwhile, Portland, they were not spreading the wealth around the way that the Thunder were. They were very much clustered in 4 main guys. Dame had 26. Simons had 26, but yeah, you're not buying into that nonsense. Gary Trent had 22. He got hot, scored a lot. Carmelo Anthony had 22. Derrick Jones Jr. played 27 minutes, but didn't really do anything with them. Rodney Hood was out for this ball game. And, we're seeing what Portland is with a bunch of their guys hurt. They're a team that isn't going to play much defense. Oklahoma City was getting an open shot on almost every single possession. It was a miracle that the Blazers were even close in this game. And if Portland is laying more than a possession to pretty much anyone, I'm fading them right now. They need whopper offensive performances to win basketball games right now. And they will every once in a while, because nothing is set in stone, and the NBA is a bit unpredictable. But if you're leaving guys as open as they left the Thunder for most of yesterday's game, you're going to lose a lot. No Rocco. Concussion protocol now. I'm still holding on to him, and maybe this explains something. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he comes back from concussion protocol and he's got his touch back. Like maybe a break is what actually fixes him. I will say this for Portland. For as long as Rocco and McCollum and Nurk are out, Carmelo Anthony is a must-own fantasy player. And you might get a couple of weeks out of this. He's going to take a ton of shots, which is not great for your field goal percent, but usage is value. He's going to score a bunch. He's somehow finding his way into steals and blocks. He's going to get you 5-6 rebounds a game if he's playing starters minutes. I don't know how long his body can handle it, but they're going to ask him to do it probably for a couple of weeks, at least until Rocco comes back. 1 week, I don't know, 2. And he still might actually be useful even after that while McCollum is out. But we'll take that sort of, moment by moment. The field goal percent is going to hurt. But right now, Carmelo Anthony, his last 3 games, despite shooting 34% from the field is actually a top 80 guy over that stretch. Or 2 games, I guess. They had a couple games postponed. And then before that, if you include the previous one, it doesn't really move the needle very much in the downward direction either. I don't know how long he can keep up the steals and blocks. He's LaMarcus Aldridging things, slapping it on the way up, doing these weird swinging over the top where he's catching it with a finger. And it's working for him. And heaven forbid he actually gets on a little bit of a heater. So, yeah, add all the Melos. It's that time, man. It's Carmelo season. It's crazy. What a time. Warriors blew out the Wolves. Ricky Rubio played 26 minutes. That was the guy we were watching in this one with no D'Angelo Russell again. I want to see what Rubio does with D'Angelo Russell, but I will say this. After being pretty much decidedly out on Ricky Rubio most of this year, if somehow this D'Angelo absence is what thrusts him into more permanent playing time, I wouldn't want to be a guy that missed it. So if you have a spot, call him a speculative ad. I bet D'Angelo's back for their rematch with the Warriors tomorrow. I bet he's playing in that one. And then we'll see. What does Rubio do? Do his minutes trend back down to 22? And his touches trend down and his assists trend down? Because when he's more this primary point guard type, well, I don't even care that he wasn't taking many shots. He got 11 assists yesterday. And they won the previous game against the Pelicans. They lost this one big by 22. So, I mean, what does that say? Are they better? Is this going to be the thing that says, oh, Rubio needs to be running the point more? I don't know. But again, I don't want to miss it if this is indeed the thing. Malik Beasley, he's going to get a lot of shots while everybody else is out. Jared Vanderbilt, who we thought was going to be this incredible streamer last week, has now finally kind of moved into a more predictable streaming role with no Karl Anthony Towns. But of course, as this team gets healthy, he becomes mostly irrelevant. I got a question on Twitter why Jared Vanderbilt is not going to be relevant once Cat comes back because he's playing power forward. Well, some of that is just floor spacing. Vanderbilt plays like a center. I know he's playing power forward because Naz Reid was playing center, but he plays like a center. He's not a floor spacer. He's not shooting the outside shot. He wants to be near the rim, and teams nowadays just want spacing. And so that's going to make it kind of hard. I will say this, though, and we've talked about this on this podcast, and we talked about it a bunch on the Real Big Three with my buddies Jonas and Bogman. If Vanderbilt can somehow keep his minutes above 20, he's probably worth hanging on to. So where you're at right now is kind of a stream with upside, so to speak, where you can stream him as long as Cat is out. You can stream Vanderbilt because he's just rolling in defensive stats right now. He's had, what is he at now? 10 steals his last 5 ball games and 6 blocks his last 5 ball games. Pretty much since Cat went down. That's basically that run. I think he had one real clunker mixed in there, something like that. I might be getting that exact timeline wrong. So I would have no problem with you guys adding Jared Vanderbilt, and then when Cat comes back, just sit on him for like 2 games and see what happens. Let's play that game. Sit on him for a game or 2. See what happens. So that to me actually makes a lot of sense. I might even do that while we're talking on the podcast. Pick him up. See where he's at. If it all goes to hell, you drop him. No big deal, right? No big deal. But right now, he's rolling. And so you might as well just kind of roll right along with him. I don't know. It's one of those things, like you never know. Maybe he keeps his spot. Or maybe he plays 22 minutes. That's still probably enough for him. Maybe not. If he doesn't, you punt. You move along to the next thing. Warriors are pretty predictable these days. James Wiseman is pretty much a drop if you can't sit on this type of thing all season long. And look, here's the reason that I can pretty safely call Wiseman a drop. The Warriors want to compete. They're 9-8. They're currently the 8th seed in the Western Conference. They're going to want to be in that mix. They don't want this to be a wasted year. If this was going to be a wasted year, they would just trot him out there for 25, 30 minutes a game. And yes, I do think he slowly does more as the season rolls along. But more than what we're at right now doth not a fantasy player make. He's number 203 and trending down. Sorry, guys. I think he's probably out. The only other question on the Warriors is Draymond Green going to be a fantasy value this year? And the jury is very much out on that one. He makes them so much better with his play, but it really isn't translating to fantasy anymore. Steals and blocks are way down. Percentages not good. He's out there to anchor the defense and facilitate on offense. And it's going to be up to Steph, Wiggins, and Oubre to score, basically. And yesterday they very much did because everybody scores against Minnesota. Who doesn't? Steph, big game, 36. Wiggins, 23, 6 defensive stats. Oubre, 14, 6, 4, 4 defensive stats. I haven't looked up those guys in a little bit. I think Wiggins has actually been pretty good this year. He's number 75. Despite a bad free throw percent, he's been able to float that with, basically defensive stats. And Kelly Oubre, still at number 172 on the year, shooting 35.5% from the field. That is, I would have called him still a buy low, but I don't feel like anybody that has Oubre feels as wronged as they were by him before. He's actually been inside the top 100 the last 2 weeks, still shooting by 38.5% over that stretch. But, I mean, the upside is so very clear. I don't know what it would take to get him, but if you could throw out like a Joe Harris, who's been pretty damn good so far this year. Harris, where the hell's he been lately? Joe, 85 over the last 2 weeks, right around 80 over the season. I don't know if it would get the job done, but it might. And if you can, I would. We'll see. All right, that's your big Monday recap. Recap, huh? Learn how to talk, Dan. Pivoting towards Tuesday, but first, of course, I want to thank our buddies at mybookie.ag. Once again, we remind you every day on the podcast to join us in our gambling endeavors here at Hoopball. You guys know me. I worked for Pregame, it's a sports betting, sports handicapping website, back in 2009, 10, and 11. I've been betting sports for a very long time. I have a pretty good feel for the NBA. Back then, I did a lot of sports, but not all the other sports anymore. So follow us. Follow me. I don't care who you follow. Pick one of our 7 handicappers or pick all 7 here at Hoopball. And go to mybookie.ag, open an account using promo code Hoopball, make that first deposit, and start playing along with us. It's really like it's such a quick and painless process. Mybookie.ag is the website. Promo code is Hoopball, all one word, HOOPBALL. You put that in on the third page of sign up. It unlocks a 50% deposit match bonus if you'd like to use that. There are some rollover requirements there. Even if you don't use it, at least it tells them who sent you. And then the wager pass at Hoopball, which is 33 cents a day, gets you betting analysis from 7 analysts at Hoopball, myself included, every single day. So each daily thread is basically worth 33 cents. It's about $10 a month. 2 days ago, we all went 9-1 combined. Just a massacring. Yesterday, I rolled out a 3-1 day. We won on Orlando, Indiana, Oklahoma City, lost with the Heat after their late meltdown. That was unfortunate. Could have gone 4-0. 2-0 the previous day. A little 5-1 run going for me over here. It's fun, man. You don't want to try to win a house overnight. It's slow, methodical winning over the long haul. And our team handicaps every single major sport: football, basketball, college football, college basketball, hockey, MMA, soccer. You name it, we handicap it. That's $9.99 at hoop-ball.com, the wager pass, or the Hoopball 360 membership, which gets you that and the fantasy pass. All of those come with Discord access. You can talk to the analysts about our betting throughout the day. What are we looking at? What do we think about some of your plays? That's all included in the monthly membership. So go to hoop-ball.com, click on the premium tab, choose wager pass, and get it. Then go open up an account over at mybookie.ag and play with us. Although I will say, I don't have any plays tonight. I don't like this betting card. But do it anyway. Come on, let's get it going. there's a dozen games tomorrow, so there's like a 99% chance I'm going to have at least one play, probably more. And I'd love it if you guys came along for the ride. One of the things about sports betting, and then we'll move on and preview our short Tuesday card here because we're getting towards the end of the rope, is if you're paying, and a lot of websites out there charge $25, $30 per day to get their sports betting information. That, by the way, not sustainable. That's called a tout. And we have to tout a little bit here because you got to sell something. But that's called being a tout. You sell a $30 play every day. Unless somebody's betting about 10 times more than what they're spending on the play they're buying, you cannot win if you're spending that much. You're spending $30 on the play and you're putting $50 on the bet. You're guaranteed to lose long term because you just can't win a high enough percentage to cover what you're spending on the play. If you're spending 33 cents on a card that has 10, 15, 20 plays on it, it's negligible. It's negligible. That's why this is okay. You're getting analysis and you're getting 10, 15, 20 plays almost every single day for 33 cents. That is the Wager Pass at hoop-ball.com. Again, go there, click on the fantasy or the premium tab, choose Wager Pass, jump on board with us, open an account at mybookie.ag with promo code hoopball. And finally, and I did this on yesterday's show, if any of you out there, this is recruiting for our gaming division week. If any of you guys out there, we got a couple of apps in yesterday. If any of you guys out there are big into sports betting and you haven't really tried the analyst side of the coin before, come on over. We're training, we're growing. We want people that have the passion but haven't really been trained to be a tout, because that's not who we want. We want folks that have been betting forever and are comfortable and confident and winners, but we want you guys to present your information to people the right way. That's what we want to do here at Hoopball. So hit me up. Send an email to teamhoopball at hoop-ball.com. Again, that's teamhoopball at hoop-ball.com, or bug me on Twitter at Dan Bespris. Let me know that you'd like to apply to be part of our Hoopball gaming division. Now, finally, you guys stuck with me there on the promo section in the middle of the podcast. Clippers are at Atlanta. Of course, the big news from yesterday, we kind of buried the lead here. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in health and safety protocols for the Clippers. This feels like it's something team-related. If there's two guys, two superstars at the same damn time, really big deal. Because if no one else on the Clippers goes into health and safety protocols, that means their games will not be postponed, and that means that Kawhi and PG are going to be missing games here, which is a fat disappointment because those dudes were playing in back-to-backs this year. That's a kick in the nads. For the Clippers, you can probably stream guys like Marcus Morris Sr., Luke Kennard, maybe even Lou Williams. You'll know by watching tonight's game, and you don't even really have to get out in front of it if you don't want to. You can just watch tonight's game in Atlanta and say, oh, cool, that guy's going to be good the rest of the week. Atlanta, let's see what Gallo's minutes look like tonight. He was up in the 18-19 range last time around. Does he get up on over 20 in this one? Clint Capella, Trae Young, are they back in the lineup for this ball game? Line is Atlanta by 5. I would actually take the Clippers, if anything, here, but I don't think I'm betting anything on the card tonight. A lot of fantasy stuff to watch there for streaming purposes and for Gallo sit-start purposes. Washington, I don't think anybody else is back for the Wizards tonight. I think it's going to be the same group that got beat up in San Antonio. Houston favored by 3.5. I believe Christian Wood is out. Last I saw, he was doubtful. I don't know if they've made it official yet. John Wall in, I believe. Victor Oladipo in, I believe, unless something happens while we're talking here, which means Houston now finally kind of getting closer. Is Daniel House back as well? Maybe. He's near. They're getting closer to actually being at full strength. When they are, my real question isn't so much like, does anyone on the wing actually separate themselves? I'm inclined to think the answer is no there. But do they ever run a Boogie Wood front court? That remains the question, and we may not get our answer tonight if Wood is still out. For Washington, I don't know. I mean, you're not going to dive in too deep here until they get their pieces back, so it's going to be a whole lot of Bradley Beal, and there's a Russ revenge angle here for Houston if you're into that sort of thing. Probably better for a player prop type deal, but we also don't know how many minutes he's going to play. I would lean to Washington, by the way, in this ballgame. I know the line is quite short. Houston has won a couple games in a row, but I think Washington plays better in this one. I think they hang tough in a high-scoring game. Knicks are in Utah. I would love to take an 11.5-point underdog, but not against the Jazz right now. They are just crushing teams. Jazz have won 8 games in a row. They're third place in the Western Conference, and they've looked every bit of it. Just beating the hell out of teams, like not close ball games. It's not actually that dissimilar from what the Lakers were doing for a stretch there, where they were just sort of hurting basketball clubs. And I fear they may do that to the Knicks as well. I know the Knicks are 8-10. They're not bad this year, blah, 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 all that good stuff. I just don't have any idea how they're going to score consistently against this Utah team because the Jazz force teams to shoot more, and the Knicks like to take it to the hole. They're a paint team. They're going to have to make some shots if they want to hang in this thing. Maybe they will. I would look at the under, except there's also a very real chance the Jazz score $120 because they've just been so good lately. And this, by the way, is why I hate tonight's card. So slight lean to the Clippers, slight lean to the Wizards, and then nothing really in that late ball game. Good gravy. Rough card. But we got a dozen tomorrow, so at least that's hanging around. Folks, please, if you have a moment, I will beg you. Yes, I have no shame. I have no dignity. I'm all shame and no dignity. Please, 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 if you like the podcast, drop a 5-star review on it. It's very easy to do. If you're listening on your phone right now, open up the podcast app on your Apple-branded mobile device. Go to the search button at the bottom. It's bottom right. Type in Fantasy NBA. And by the time you get to that, this podcast should pop up. But if it doesn't, you can type in the word today. Click on that so it searches. The search results, they'll come up with the show icons. Don't scroll down into the episodes. That screws everything up. Click on Fantasy NBA Today, the show icon, and scroll down. And that's all you have to do. Scroll down to the bottom. That's where the rate and review stuff is. I want to get to 600 ratings and reviews this season, and I think you guys can help me get there. I know there's at least a handful of you that can still do it, and I will love you forever. Please, 5-star review, subscribe, Dan's love, all of that in that order. That's how it works. This is Fantasy NBA Today. I'm Dan Bespris, at Dan Bespris on Twitter. Please do sign up. Seriously, go sign up for social media. You're missing out on things happening faster than you can get the information anywhere else. Tomorrow, short Tuesday recap. Very big Wednesday preview. That's Wednesday's show. Hope you'll join us for that one. For now, so long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.